Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Williams. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Williams. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Williams, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. We have a special guest, but before we get started, just kind of want to get updated on the news that's out there today. It seems like yesterday there was a poll from CNN, and I think it's Ipsos or a combination of one of those polls, and it turned out that it seems like Biden was back really on top. 34 points. I think Elizabeth was at 19, Bernie at 16 or something like that, and everybody started talking about the stability of Joe Biden as if, I still don't understand how they continue to push Biden. Biden, as he comes out, he just continues to look more feeble. And when he does that, we are America, and start to talk like that, it comes over as so false. And it comes over as if, are you kidding me? So, right now what we're currently seeing is a push to get Biden elected. So that poll comes out, and it shows that, oh, wow, it looks like Biden is on the upswing again. And in the process of being on the upswing, what happens? It turns out that, well, that is not the case, because there is a new poll that comes out today, and that new poll says Elizabeth Warren is up by 17. So anyhow, it seems very strange what we are starting to see happen again. But you know what? It turns out that what I'm going to do to get started is I'm going to start with the guest that I have, and then we'll move on from the guest. So let's go ahead and do that. I guess I need to cue the guest up before we get started and tell you a little bit about who the guest is, because you know what? She's a very special person, and what I want to do is I want to cue her up well for what we're doing today. So what I'm going to do is first start the show. And how does the show start? It starts like this. Actress, comedian Maysoon Zayid discusses Palestine disability and find another dream. Maysoon Zayid visited with us to discuss her bold views on Palestine disability rights and much more. Her new audiobook, Find Another Dream, is ready for all to hear. Actress and comedian Maysoon Zayid did not disappoint with her frank, in-your-face commentary. Find Another Dream is a Maysoon Zayid heavily self-centered comedic memoir. Zayid takes the audience on her crooked journey from being born to immigrant parents in the great state of New Jersey to tap dancing on Broadway. The book explores scenes of disability, living in cerebral palsy, bullying, love, loss, and bigotry, all told through the lens of comedy. If your dream turns into a nightmare, find another dream. On October 18, Jane Fonda presented Maysoon Zayid with an award at the Women's Media Award along with Gayle King, Julie K. Brown, and Zerlina Maxwell in New York City. Maysoon can currently be seen on ABC's General Hospital. She is known to most as a full-time contributor on Keith Olbermann's Show and Countdown. She has appeared on 60 Minutes, 2020, CNN, ABC News, and Al Jazeera, often talking about comedy, bullying, Islam, comedy, disability, and pop culture. Later on, we are going to talk about an email that I got from a reverend, a pastor, So what we'll do is we'll get into Zayid and then we'll get trucking. So folks, enjoy the show. Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. I'm here with a special guest. Today we're not going to be all about politics in as much as she is very, very political. Maysoon Zayid is an actress, a comedian, a writer, and disability advocate. She is a graduate of and a guest comedian in the residence at Arizona State University. Maysoon is the co-founder, executive producer of the New York Arab American Comedy Festival and the Muslim Funny Fest. She was full-time on-air contributor to Countdown with Keith Olbermann and a columnist for the Daily Beast. She has most recently appeared on Oprah Winfrey Networks in Deep Shift, 60 Minutes, and CNN. Maysoon had the #1 TED Talk of 2014, and guys, you have got to see that, and was named one of 100 women of 2015 by the BBC. As a professional comedian, Maysoon has performed in top New York clubs and has toured extensively at home and abroad. She was the headliner on the Arabs Gone Wild comedy tour and the Muslims Are Coming tour. Maysoon appeared alongside Adam Sandler in You Don't Mess with the Zohan and limped in New York Fashion Week. She is a recurring character on that show that I used to love, General Hospital, and the author and narrator of Find Another Dream. Maysoon, welcome aboard Politics Done Right. How are you doing today?
I'm so excited to be here.
Let me tell you, I'm excited to have you because I tell you what, I believe it or not, I met you long time ago
When?
on TED Talk. Actually, I saw your TED Talk long time ago, and it was like, there are two TED Talks I always remember, yours and one by Brown, and what they did.
Brene Brown.
Yes, I mean these are talks that give you hope. These are talks that says, you know what, I can do absolutely anything. So why don't you first tell us a little bit about who is Maysoon Zayid?
Well, first of all, a really fun fact is that Brene Brown and I do a tour together called Together Live.
Really?
And it's happening, like right now. Like my next show is for Together Lives in Boston on October 26th. So I've gotten to share a stage with your other favorite TED Talk. So yay.
There you go.
I am Maysoon Zayid. I'm a tap dancer, comedian, a writer, and a disability advocate.
Now, you're a lot more than that. I'm sorry.
Okay, what?
Well, I mean, let me see you. I've seen you on, you were on CNN, and I remember watching that thing that you did on CNN. And when the president wanted an apology from a comedian, you presented the absolute best defense. Why don't you tell me a little about that?
I'm back.
Okay, you're back now. Okay.
See what they did? It's the president. He's trying to silence me. It's not a conspiracy.
He's trying to silence you. Okay, let me start this part again. Okay, you gave the absolute best defense of what's her name from the
Samantha Bee.
Samantha Bee from the Comedy Channel for using the C word, and I'm like, that was the best defense of her. Go for it.
Well, they were trying to draw a comparison between Samantha Bee and Roseanne. And what I said was that you cannot compare a slur to a curse word. You know, having potty mouth is not the same as spewing hate. And that there was a clear distinction between hate speech, which is what Roseanne lost her job for, and potty mouth, which is what Samantha Bee used. And I just don't believe, I personally choose not to use the B word or the C word just because I find them violent and misogynistic. But I think in this day and age, it's very, very dangerous to try and silence a comedian. And I thought she had the right to use the word that she chose to use.
But you know what was so great with the contrast that you made? You made the contrast about locker room talk. Wait a minute. I thought these kinds of things were locker room talk.
Yeah.
How comes it works one way and not the other?
And we see that consistently. I mean, the Orange Menace is always cursing. But when Rashida Tlaib used the curse word, it became like everyone was grabbing their smelling salts, and the GOP were talking about how low class and what a bad mother. And meanwhile, he's screaming BS in front of, a Klan rally, and they're fine with it.
That is ridiculous. But let me tell you, I know you have a new book out called Find Another Dream. It's been published under the new, I think, Reese Witherspoon's book
Hello
publishing.
Sunshine, and it's available on Audible. So it's a co-production between Hello Sunshine and Audible. I got to work with like a powerful team of all women. So like my editors were women, my producer was a woman. It was really cool. I'm very excited. It's my first book ever. I call it Cotton Candy. It's not inspirational. You're not going to learn anything. I'm just trying to make you laugh and also teach you not to make the mistakes I made in my life.
Well, here's the funny thing about it, okay? Because actually want to go over some of what I understand is in the book that I haven't read because I didn't get the Audible sent to me, but I got some of the
It
context
goes on pre-sale actually in 2 days. So
in
then
2 days.
I'll try
Well,
and give you a sneak peek.
yeah, well, here's the thing about it. Whenever I'm gonna interview somebody, I kind of try to learn about them, and you come across as pretty easygoing and funny and all of that, but your life has been impressive.
Thank you.
And I mean, first of all, to overcome what many people would not with cerebral palsy. So what I want to ask you to do is, first of all, tell us that story about your dad, and you are not supposed to be a person that's walking.
Right. So I think it's really, really important to point out that there's no shame in not walking or using any mobility device you feel frees you.
Why
And
did you think you needed to say that?
because I think that as someone with cerebral palsy who walks, I don't want anyone with cerebral palsy who doesn't walk to think it's a failure on their part or that if their mom and dad just tried harder, they would be there. I think my father was dealing with a situation where he knew I would be living in an inaccessible world and he was determined to teach me. But there are people who no father's love or no determination in the world will ever get them to walk. And I just want to make sure that people know they're not lazy, they're not trying. We're just all different, and whatever our ability is, we have to achieve the best we can, not compete with others.
That's what makes you special. The reason I stopped you right there is because it's amazing that right in telling your story, you made sure that and said, in as much as I did these great things, if others are not able to do that or others haven't done that, do not hold that as some sort of a letter on them. We're just all different. That is excellent. Continue, please.
So my dad had two ways of teaching me, and the first was he would put my feet on his feet and he would just walk. And I say I walked miles on that man's shoes. And the second was to dangle a dollar bill in front of me and have me chase it. And my inner stripper was very strong, so I ran until I was by kindergarten. But also, my parents couldn't afford physical therapy, so they sent me a tap class. And dance was really integral in helping me with coordination and balance and walking. And I'm going to be tap dancing on Broadway November 4th with Together Live. Because if you're going to perform on Broadway and you're a tap dancer, you got to do both.
I don't get it though. You're going to be on Broadway tap dancing, but I hear you say you can't stand for more than 3 minutes. What
So
what
I have
happens?
to be in motion. I'm like a fish. If a fish stops swimming, it dies.
Yeah.
I'm basically like a fish. So I have to either be walking or dancing or, shimmying. But if I stand, I just
Ah.
flop over like a weeble wobble. I just right down. I mean, I just drop. It's so funny because every once in a while I don't realize I'm standing because something interesting happens. And then I'm on my butt and I'm like, oh, I forgot. I can't stand.
Now is that Keith Oberman's story real with the chair?
Yes, yes. They literally taped the chair so that it wouldn't swivel. It was brilliant. It worked.
Because I mean, you said like, oh, you were spinning in the chair, and suddenly, oh well, they brought you back on stage and said, okay, we'll tape it down.
Chair. Yeah. He taped down my chair, which is really a lot better than another show that's going to be nameless that I guested on, where they smush me between the table and the chair so the chair doesn't move.
You're kidding me.
They pin me, I swear. It looks good though because I look really tall, like my past but my ribs kind of hurt.
So you
All
have
the women commentating, they know that you'll take whatever just to get in there and fight Chris Cuomo.
well, you know what though? Every time, every one of your clips that I've seen, and not only the one on the websites, but the ones that I've seen live, you really always knock it out of the park. I mean, you're so witty.
I don't mean to be. I just am.
Well, I mean, it happens. I mean, I see you on stage, and you have this thing where, oh, I want to hear this joke. I want to hear that one about you were born with all the things that.
Oh, the oppression Olympics.
Let me hear that.
Well,
I love that.
you don't get to demand jokes, but I'm going to give you.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
This one, but this is your last one.
Okay.
Yeah, now I say in the oppression Olympics, I'd win a gold medal because I'm Palestinian, I'm Muslim, I'm a woman of color, I'm disabled, and Donald Trump's my president. So if you don't feel better about yourself, you probably should.
Listen, but I mean, when I saw that one on stage, I'm like, you know what? There are so many permutations to that particular joke. It isn't funny, but it is one. Go ahead.
And then there's like a much deeper area to that, and it's like the fact that like we're so often reduced to one identity. It really disturbs people when we're more than one thing. It's like, isn't it enough you're disabled? Do you have to be Muslim? Like I'd feel better if you could have Jesus save you and you could stop being disabled. You know what I mean? They're not used to seeing multiple minorities. So like when I do that, I'm kind of challenging the idea that like when you see disability on TV, it's a young white boy in a wheelchair.
You know what? I never quite heard it expressed that way, but that is so true. The multiple. I mean, I get it from when you said you had all these things. I mean, I usually call myself. I have all the stigmas: Black, Latino, Caribbean, all at the
Yeah.
same time. But you actually put some context in there. I kind of like that.
Yeah, and there's people out there that have even more than I do, you know? Like, and so I just like to challenge that image of like, what does define you and who chooses it? And by owning all those things and acknowledging that in the world we live in, these are bad things, but they are exactly who I am and I identify with them proudly. And just also trying to get people not to be ashamed to say they're disabled. It's like by packaging it with all this other cool stuff around it, it makes it easier to say the word for people.
Right.
Just disabled, I'm Palestinian disabled. I'm a tap dancer, I'm disabled. You know, you put it with like a couple of different things and it feels better.
Right. No, it makes a lot of sense. Now, it turns out that, watching some of the things, I fell in love with your parents. I mean,
Yeah.
they are integral. I see them as integral, and you tell me if I'm reading it wrong, but integral in who you are, because I mean the strength that you portray with the disability that you have, and just earlier on telling me all these things that you have planned to do in the next few days.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think they were a really good mix, you know. I say my dad was a teddy bear, my mom's a tiger, and we were her pride, you know. And I think what was cool about it is that my dad was a real cheerleader who was very much invested in me succeeding in the minutia of life. My mother was more big picture, and I always say she really helped create and drive me because failure was not an option. So when you grow up in a house where a B is not a good grade, it has to be an A. It really kind of helps set you up for the competitive life that I live in Hollywood. In the book, I say Hollywood could never chew me up and eat me alive because my mother had like created someone who was unbreakable because she had a higher standard than anyone ever would. And I love that about her because I really feel like it got me to where I am. But I think some Americans would be like, wow, she's mean.
That is so interesting, and you know the best part of it is having that, you know, you're right. First of all, a lot of Americans would say that in the beginning.
And I'm an American, but I mean, Americans.
I don't mean I understand what you
a
mean.
grandparent who is like, you have failed me. Don't
I
come to my funeral. They don't understand that.
I understand that as well. I am an American as well, but there's a certain thing culturally that folks would say. Now now here's the thing. The good thing about
Sorry, I'm gonna just interrupt for on my dad's side of it. I love writing about my dad because there's this stereotype of these oppressive Arab men who are violent and who don't love their daughters and who treat them like property. And it was really fun for me to be able to tell this story of like the poster child for dads, like the type of dad you would love and dream of as a daughter having, and having that be an Arab man and a Muslim man and a an immigrant and all these things that are violence and vilified.
well, those things always got me rather perturbed. After all, I think in there are several Muslim countries where women have already taken the highest office. There are
Yeah,
several Muslim countries where, and not only that, do you think, it, we all have our patriarchs and the patriarchal societies, and women have busted through that all along. Was it Reagan who was president, or was it Nancy? Anyhow, we can.
yeah, and we still have a long way to go. Like I'm watching the election, the campaigning now, and it's still really difficult to be a female candidate. There's still women are still held to a different standard even in this country. Women are still facing violent, like incredible amounts of violence worldwide. So there are some steps forward and there are some steps back. There are revolutionary countries where you're like, America's never had a woman president, but Pakistan has. And then you're like, okay, but at the same time, Saudi Arabia exists.
Yes.
So it's a little bit both. But I mean, I watch the way they talk about Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris, and it's just different than they talk about the men. And nobody talks about poor Amy, so I can't compare it.
Maysoon, when I got you on, this show is called Politics Done Right, and we do heavy politics on this show. And I brought Maysoon, a comedian, actress, an advocate, and said, you know what? I'm not going to get too deep into politics. But after I saw you on CNN, I probably said, you know what? I bet she is going to steer it somewhere
Yeah.
towards politics.
So, one of the swing votes that's being ignored right now is the disability vote. We've had debate after debate with almost no conversation about disability. A candidate who wants to win has to have a well rounded disability policy and realize that 1 in 5 Americans is disabled, 1 in 3 households has a disabled person. They think that when you talk about disability, you're only talking about healthcare. That's completely wrong. We are concerned about equal pay. We're concerned about gun control. We're concerned about police brutality, taxes, healthcare. You have to look at the disabled vote as like a full human being. We're being ignored, and it's a swing vote that really needs to be courted because 46% went to the dark side last time.
Really?
Yeah, because they were convinced that brown people were getting health care illegally and black people were defrauding the government and getting health care. And the reason that they weren't getting their health care was because we were stealing it, not because the government refused to expand Medicaid.
You have got to be kidding me.
So that's politics number one, focusing on the disability vote and realizing that it crosses all intersections. Two, they have to stop being PEP. PEP is progressive except for Palestine. Michigan was
Wow.
Yeah, Michigan was lost because Hillary Clinton would not bend a centimeter on Palestine Israel. And Donald Trump, who lies like a rug, said that he was going to treat them equally. Ha ha ha. And I know a bunch of Arabs that voted for him because Hillary was all in and Trump pretended to be both sides. And so I think that the modern Democratic Party needs to stop just carrying water and be like, yes, Palestinians deserve equal rights. Don't say anything else. I know you're not going to enact anything. I saw what happened with Barack Obama. But just give Arabs that little morsel of hope that you actually think Palestinians are human beings. I think being like all in on Israel is going to lose votes, and I think that's how Hillary lost Michigan.
BDS movement.
I'm not allowed to talk about that because my dad's buried in Palestine. I need to be able to visit
Uh,
his.
I mean, fair enough, fair
That's
enough.
why you silence people, and I am silent.
No, no, and you know what though? I think we should all have that latitude. It's first of all on a public basis or whatever. So, granted. Now,
You gotta make decisions on what you're willing to risk.
no,
Yeah.
actually, you know what? You're absolutely right, and everybody should be given that latitude to do that. Now, here's another thing. I want to stay on Palestine just a little bit longer. Um,
My
do you
favorite subject.
say that again?
It's like my favorite subject. I bought a house in Palestine before I bought one in America.
Well, I don't.
This investment, it's the most coveted land in the world. So
Yes.
either the price will skyrocket or it will be rocketed to the ground. So it's high risk.
It's not funny, but I mean,
It is though, because it's true.
that is. Oh my! I'm not going to go there. I am not. I am not going to go there. I'm not going to. But let me ask you this: two-state solution. I want to ask you something in this. No two-state
Yeah.
solution.
No, I'm a one-stater.
And how? In what respect?
It's one state. You can't separate people who live on top of each other. There's absolutely no way to separate them. They already work together. They drive on the same roads. The only thing that's separating them is this drive for supremacy. You give equal rights to everyone. You give reparations to the people who lost everything. And you have multiple religions functioning on an equal basis, and they could actually get the project right.
So let me stop you right there because I asked I asked a Jewish friend of mine who supports the BDS movement, and you don't have to
Israeli or
comment on
Jewish?
that. Uh-uh.
Israeli or Jewish?
She is
Because it's
Jewish.
really not
No,
about,
no,
but
she's
it's
Jewish.
not about religion.
Right.
It's about,
I get it. You know
I,
something?
the conflation worries me, but I'll listen.
You are, that is too smart, okay? No, no, I'm serious. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And the conflation is what creates a lot of issues. You're absolutely right. Now, that said, she is Jewish with an affinity for Israel, okay? Now, that said, she doesn't know where she stands because I asked her one specific question. You're talking about a one-state solution, which I agree should really be the case. You can't kick people out of the
Yeah.
lands they had and said, somehow this was divinely given to me. That said, my question to you is about then you really cannot have something called a Jewish state because in effect that is saying you have an apartheid state.
Right.
Oh, simple answer, huh?
It's very simple. I don't support theocracy. I believe in equality for all. I think that a state with equal rights for all religions and people without faith is a safe haven for people who identify as Jewish, feel that they're persecuted other places in the world. They would still feel safe here. You don't have to have superior rights to be safe. Equal rights gives that safety.
That is so true. I mean, and we're coming close to the end, so talk to me a little bit about October 18th.
October 18th.
Yes, I mean, you Maysoon presents an award.
October
Don't you?
22nd.
Oh, so they gave me the wrong date.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Okay, the Women's Media Awards.
Tonight I'm receiving a Women's Media Award for my impact in media.
There you go.
Then I'm going to San Francisco to make the funny. Then I'm going to Boston with my Together Live tour, which is the greatest tour on earth, togetherlive.com. Also, everything's at maysoon.com. But the big news is November 1st, my first book ever comes out. And I need people to pre-order it and buy it and listen to it because I could only write a short book and I had to cut out all of my friends and I told them they'll be in the sequel. So this book is family, love, and career, and friends are in the sequel. I'm going to lose all my friends if I don't sell enough books to get a sequel. So no pressure, but I don't want to die alone and be eaten by my cat.
Well, you know something, I am going to have in the blog post for that will accompany this show. By the way, I think your show goes live tomorrow, but in
Yeah.
the broadcast that goes for the show, we will have a link to your book.
Yes. On
We will,
Audible.
on yes on Audible. You know.
Yes. I'm going to keep plugging it because it's an Audible original. It doesn't exist elsewhere. But there's a downloadable PDF because we made sure that my audiobook was accessible to everyone. So if you need to read it, you can do that too.
You see, you think about everything, don't you?
Everything.
You think.
Except bills. Yeah. I have like a complete void in my mind when it comes to finances. I
Well, you
think
know what?
something else.
You'll have your staff take care of that. You just let them handle that
Isn't
little
that
piece.
how they end up embezzling like millions from you and you end up like Kevin Bacon?
Oh God, don't tell me about it. Yeah, don't tell me
Yeah.
about it.
All
But
right, I have to go.
yes, give me a closer.
You're a closer?
Yes.
Buy my book. Bye.
Thank you so kindly, Maysoon. That was Maysoon Zayid. All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed that interview. Maysoon is, if you ever saw Keith Olbermann, a countdown with Keith Olbermann, she's a regular there. You saw on CNN. She was pretty damn good on CNN a couple of times with the way she really hit the president when he did all the wrong things. So I hope you enjoyed that little segue there from Maysoon Zayid. Anyhow, continuing with the program, let me first tell you we had some issues. We have a new program that automatically shares the program. It's called Zapier. It's a good product. Shares the program to different spaces. And what I've noticed lately is if there's a sequence that occurs that it actually knocks us off because it thinks that there is some sort of a person stealing my account and I have to go create new passwords and the work. And we lost the feed on Facebook for a while. Of course, it was continuous on Facebook. And of course, we are streaming this stuff. We're recording it. So those of you who missed the first part of the program, if you go to the thread, you'll be able to get it. Or if you go to the podcast, the vlogcast, you'll be able to see it. Anyhow, I have an interesting thing that occurred. I got an email today. This morning, I woke up to this email. It's an email from a pastor. And, I decided to, when I saw the email from the pastor, I said, you know what? I'm going to answer this. And then the answer turned out to be pretty darn long. And, I have my 11 o'clock blog to do. So I said, you know what? I'm going to answer this thing like it's a blog. And when I answer it like it's a blog, I will then be able to, turn that reply to the email plus the email proper into a blog space. So what I did is I made it the blog of the day. So folks, do you know what time it is?
It's time for the weekly blog post.
Okay, here is the weekly blog post. It is titled, My Response to Pastor Challenging Student Loan Forgiveness and Medicare for All. And I want to mention something else that somebody wrote on when I posted that thing. One of my great followers happened to be I think he was a bit upset, and I want to read a little thread that he left before I start the No, actually, know what? I'll go ahead and read the blog first, and then we'll go to that thread. Anyway, it goes as follows. My response to pastor challenging student loan forgiveness and Medicare for All. I think it is important to engage those with opposing views with respect, civility, and clarity. The effectiveness of indoctrinating values of the Powell Memo is clear when a pastor can oppose Medicare for All and student loan forgiveness. I mean, I don't see how a pastor could ever do that, but we have so many, especially evangelicals, that they are completely vested in full-fledged, unfettered capitalism. What it is, if Jesus was alive, you remember when Jesus went into the market on the Sabbath and just tore everything down, and it's not always about marketing, folks. It's not always about business, folks. So anyhow, I think it is important to engage. This morning I received the following note from a pastor. He was referencing one of the newsletters I send out after every Politics Done Right show. Here is a newsletter article he was referencing. By the way, you can subscribe to the newsletter by go to politicsdoneright.com, and you can subscribe to the newsletter. I talk about the show, and I usually have a story to tell or something. It's worth subscribing to the show. So please go ahead and go to Politics Done Right, subscribe to the show, and also you may want to consider subscribing to the show proper itself as well. Not only the show, but the newsletter. But anyhow, he says, "Hello, Eberto." You spelled my name wrong. "Hope all is well with you. Interesting article here. There were 2 comments that I would like to have clarified. In your Facebook thread, one of your followers mentioned the MFA is a matter of framing when the author said framing. Is that written in the context of truth? What I mean by that is President Obama said you can keep your doctor under the Affordable Care Act. Many found it to be unaffordable and they could not keep their doctor. When Bernie Sanders and others say this, are they being truthful? The other point that stood out to me was this is the guy who sent me the email. The other point that stood out to me was the idea of people being concerned about who pays for health care if we went to a single-payer system. The real issue with it is who decides what care one gets. It sounds like progressives are proposing a healthcare system that is run by the government. Do we really want our healthcare to be managed by the government? I don't think so. Lastly, the idea of free college tuition sounds great, but nothing is free. Who will pay for it? Like the taxpayers. Kind regards, Reverend, and I withheld his name out of courtesy. The following was my response to the pastor. Thanks for responding. By the way, the name is Egberto. Now for the answers. Numero 1. Framing in my parlance is about telling the truth. The frame is the context that makes the statement truth. When framing is done correctly, it prevents distortions and externalities. In that light, Obama's lie of the year was no lie. And remember, one of these fact checkers called Obama saying you can keep your doctor if you want to keep it the biggest lie of the year. Now we had throwing your grandmother off the cliff. We had things like death panels. All of that. These are big lies. But suddenly Obama's was the big lie. It was framed wrong. In my opinion, yes, Obama framed it wrong. It should have been, this is how I think Obama should have framed it, and then they could have never called it a lie of the year because it was no lie in the first place. It was just framed wrong. Check this out. He should have framed it this way. We wrote the Affordable Care Act so that if you like your doctor, you can keep it. However, given that some politicians owned by the plutocracy demanded that we maintain private insurance whose fiduciary responsibility is to the overpaid executives and shareholders and not the person in need, a posture Jesus, Mohammed, or any religious leader would find reprehensible and immoral, there exists a possibility that they will take your doctor away, not the Affordable Care Act. To be clear, Obama supported single payers before it was popular till he met owned Democrats. Bernie and Elizabeth leaves less wiggle room because if we make the transformational moral change, a doctor only has one payer and thus will fulfill his oath. Certain professions should be centered around humanity. There are many others where greed can reign without harming. The truth is, and that was the answer to his first question. Second, the truth is, in America, that ultimately everyone gets some sort of health care. Some have to wait until they are sick enough to go to an emergency room. Others must go bankrupt. It is simply an indefensible system. Now, we are paying those costs right now, albeit in a fraudulent manner. those like me who pay health insurance premiums to a private company, part of that money ultimately goes to pay for those who cannot afford health insurance or won't buy it. How? The cost of emergency rooms and all other services include the cost of those not paying anything. B, the price of drugs is a fraud. Most drugs have their genesis in universities and through grants or for research elsewhere. In other words, investments from the taxpayers. When it is time to market the drug companies do the final testing, invest billions in marketing, profit immensely, and we pay the inflated cost. One would think that as the seed investors, the government would share in the profits for reinvestment. But I guess that would be too ethical for a capitalist economy. That would be too ethical for a capitalist economy. We could morph this argument for just about every sector of the healthcare industrial complex in America, an industry that is highly profitable on the sickness and misery of the masses. And C, I find it ironic when folks deride government running healthcare as if government isn't we the people as per our Constitution. So you're saying, I don't want government running the healthcare, which is meaning we the people running the healthcare, which means we'll get a healthcare that we the people want. If you think it isn't like it isn't like work I'm doing, we must ensure it is. We the people, we must ensure it is we the people. That's our responsibility. But I also find it amazing how capitalism has become a religion in America. Why would someone believe that private companies whose fiduciary responsibility is profit maximization for their shareholders and high salaries and bonuses for the executives would care more about your health and well-being than, well, we the people? It takes a special level of indoctrination I have written about when I described the Powell memo. Until Americans realize that some parts of our service are anathema to markets, we will continue to suffer. If I were religious, I would say God is punishing us for having the market as our God. Think about that. Think about what I just said. If I were a religious person, I would have to say God has got to be punishing us because we've accepted capitalism not as just a tool in our economics or a tool in our economy, but a God. Have we forgotten, thou shalt have no other gods before me? Yet it is the evangelical Christians and others that are so devoted, so divinely inspired to protect a system that is hurting so many. You are right, is what I continue to the Reverend. You're right. Nothing is free. We should remind corporations of that fact. We once had a pact. Corporations pay taxes. Part of that went to universities to educate students so that there would be ample talent for our corporations. In other words, they did their part. But as corporations paid off legislators, they kept getting their tax breaks as students were forced into debt. And the private bankers were ready to oblige. Before President Obama, private banks would give loans to students with no risk. If the student defaulted, again, if the student defaulted, the government made the bank whole. They paid the bank all the money owed by that student. There was no risk to the bank, yet they charge a higher interest than even government charge. No risk. If that isn't socialism for corporations, I do not know what is. An article in Obamacare made the government make the loans directly to the students, freeing up a lot more money to help more people. How did they free up money? All the interest rates that people are paying that was going to the bank is now going to the people. Because who was making the loan in the first place? We the people. People, we got to start thinking straight. Again, certain services do not belong in the private sector. Health insurance and student loans are two of these areas. They are a cancer in our society. And I am sure, for those who are religious, Jesus would not approve. I am sure Jesus would not approve. So anyhow, my friend, thanks for those questions, those statements. I think it is important for the communication given narratives that are put out by evil, well-calculated think tanks. I mean, this young man, this reverend, this pastor's mind didn't just vaporize into thinking these thoughts. These were well-orchestrated, well-designed Powell Manifesto type narratives that inculcated in the minds of many. Somehow, we need to have this very selfish, punitive, look out for yourself only type of economy. And you know what? Most people aren't that way. Most Americans are not that way. They are told they are. They are told that that is how the system works. But that's not the Americans that I know. And it's not a matter of the Americans I know. That's not the Americans you know. They hold the system hostage. Back when the coffee party was just started, way back in 2010, I wrote an article that went viral. You can go ahead and look it up. It was called Middle Class Held Hostage. I mean, that's the same time that I wrote my book, As I See It, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. And I never always say that, but you know, you can check it out here. Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. This book is still prescient. The data in this book still so darn accurate, even with all that time that has passed. And you know why? Because the status quo based on the Powell Manifesto remain. Let me finish the blog. I know this pastor is a good person that, like anyone else, can be influenced by their preferred media. No pastor or person of the cloth is immune. Now, I would love your opinions as well. So please give us a call, 646-716-5812. Drop me a line, or under the video, you can also put your stuff as well. Thank you, Daniel S., for saying, right on. Be one of my first, I just got this thing on Facebook called, what is it called? Super Chat. So you should consider super chatting Politics Done Right. And we'll say, guess what? Let's see who becomes Politics Done Right's first super chatter. Let's see who becomes the first super chatter. So look at that stuff and become a super chat. Let's see if it works. I haven't had a super chat yet because it just got enabled about 2 days ago, I believe. Anyhow, I posted this article, and my good friend, Brother Lee Grant, says, Egberto, I think you're going off the deep end. Where in the hell do you think Jesus preached his support for Medicare for all and student loan forgiveness? And how, by God, can you think that the Son of God weighed in on public versus private debate as the healthcare and student loans? You seem to be writing the gospel according to Egberto. Oh no, I just need to read the Bible. You remember I told you? Well, let me give you my response. The response that I had to Brother Lee Grant was as follows. You may want to reread the post. The Powell Manifesto, through its infiltration of the church, media, and schools, has warped people's values. If you are a Christian, I once was. I even preached during Youth Week at my church. You may want to reread about Jesus' compassion and values and contrast it with the preachings of capitalism. For those who have a bit of objectivity remaining, it would not be difficult, but I am not sure that a man as evil and immoral can get his biggest support from evangelical Christians is in fact probative. Again, the distortion that is occurring, that Donald Trump, think about this, can be that way. It is, or can have that support. It is so darn amazing. Okay, Dana Lowe responded, Lee Grant Christ preached love and compassion. He healed people without pay many times in Scripture. Whatever you do to these, the least of my brethren, you do unto me. Translating those concepts into modern day world doesn't take a great deal of thought. I don't think he's off base at all. Thank you so kindly, Dana Lowe. I do appreciate that, and for that, I'm just sending you some love. Then, of course, there is my resident, very conservative friend, Mike Cisak, who says, Dana Lowe, Christ taught to also keep the 10 Commandments and to be charitable through your own actions, not through others via government. I don't know, people love to add government to this. Government is we the people, so that's your own actions, my friend. He also didn't teach to vote to steal from others in order to publicly give to those in need through government. Christ actually preached against such acts and paying your own debts. It's amazing how the church has taught people to twist what Christ has said into fitting the modus operandi of a vicious type of capitalism. I mean, the way they have twisted the words, and that is what makes our life or work so difficult, my brothers and my sisters. That is what makes it so difficult. Because the people leading the flock, the preachers, the pastors, they are so bought in, many of them not out of their own minds, but out of cash, out of who's paying them, will sell their soul and walk their flock right over the cliff. Voting for thievery violates thou shalt not steal and not covet your neighbor's things. The political left is constantly doing both. You see how they are able to turn charity into theft and coveting what belongs to others. You see the transit. I mean, that message from Mike Cisak is so perfectly done. It's so perfect the way he said that, because that is what the Powell Manifesto teaches. That is what the Powell Manifesto teaches on how things should be framed. And when you follow the Powell Manifesto in that regard, that is exactly what you get. So folks, just think about it. That is exactly to have been expected, and that is exactly what we got. So think about that. That is what we have got. Okay, I think I had one more comment underneath there. Let me see what that comment is. That last comment says as follows. Carol Davis says, I love your first response about Obama's statement on doctor choice. You say it so much better than I ever did, and say exactly what I have worked to impart. Thank you. Carol Davis, I humbly, I'm humbled. Thank you so kindly for those words. I want to ask you to please remember to share these. Share these. It's so important. Folks, we have a lot of work to do. When you listen to what folks like Mike Cisak and Lee Grant have to say, and I have no animosity towards these two young men. These are good people. Okay? Good people can be misinformed, ill-informed. Disinformation gets everywhere. How do you deal with it? You keep talking and you keep giving examples. What I learned today, what I can say today is that example that Michael Cisak gave is one that resonates with Christians. And I want to repeat it again because it is something that we have to blow up to smithereens. He says, Jesus also didn't teach to vote to steal from others. In order to publicly give to those in need through government, Christ actually preached against such acts and in paying your own debts. That's not the one I wanted to read. What I wanted to read is the one where he says, voting for thievery violates, thou shalt not steal and not covet your neighbor's things. In other words, he's saying, if you are paying a tax and that tax then goes to help other people, you are stealing. These are people who believe taxes should be zero. So should I say, when Mike Cisak drives on the roads for which he hadn't paid enough taxes for, is he stealing? Must I say, when he goes and he sees a product for his farm that he wants to use and he can't afford it, and somebody raises some funds for him, that he's coveting his neighbor? You see, you can stretch it to reductio ad absurdum that makes the statement so silly that it falls apart. You can make the statement so silly that it falls apart. What we have to do consistently is make sure we never, ever give these tropes a chance. Ever. You accept it with civility, with dignity, with respect, and you hit it as hard as you can, again, with civility, with dignity, and respect. We're coming to the end of the program. I want to thank you guys for being a part of the show. It is so important. I want to remind you that what the Powell Manifesto did is it first had to go against government. It had to abstract government from you. It had to tell you that government was this thing out there that you had little to do with. Because to call government bad, to call government evil without that precursor would have to call you bad, would have to call you evil. So for the most part, they have been successful in cutting government away from the people. So when you say government is bad, somehow you can isolate yourself from that. Well, I won't give you that latitude. Saying government is bad would be tantamount to saying you are bad. I don't think you are bad. I know I am not bad. I love government. I intend to continue to work to attempt to make government function better. But the people who are calling government abstractly bad are the ones who are attempting to destroy it. So all the bad things occurring in government are generally from those who are trying to kill government. So don't buy into the fallacies. Government is good because we are good, and we have to continue to make government good. For those of you who know the show, this show is a show that requires your support. So please, if you can, please remember to go to politicsdoneright.com and find some way to support these types of independent media. Because, folks, that's the only way we are going to get the real good information out to people. That is the only way we're going to make the change. politicsdoneright.com. politicsdoneright.com. You can go ahead and support us there. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out!
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.